What up, folks? It's your boy Tim again, coming to you from a workplace. As you can see, I happen to be on the road. This is a mobile video, so you're gonna get two videos today. It's crazy how much stuff we have to wear in 2021. As you can see, the title of this video is called Coca Cola Be Less White. Tasty beverage. This has made a lot of controversy in the news. Because apparently an employee of Coca Cola took a video of a diversity training manual, and in that manual, it told the employees to be less white. But here's kind of some of the things that were in there: be less white, less defensive, less certain, less arrogant, less ignorant, and more humble. According to the Coca-Cola bottling company spokesperson, they stated that this was part of a plan to promote a more inclusive workplace, or inclusive workplaces. And of course, this has a lot of people in uproar. Is it right? We can comment on that. I'm not a big fan of it myself, but I can understand, and I can also understand how people are viewing it differently. Let's be real. If you're on the right, conservative, Republican, you view this as it makes white people look bad. If you're on the left, liberal, Democrat, yeah, it makes white people look bad as well. The sticking point, obviously, is the difference in viewpoint between right and left. The right wing tends to think that the white race in 2021 is taking an unnecessary beating, undeserved beating, and being criticized daily for things that they have nothing to do with. Things that happened in America's history. The way the left, the liberals, the Democrats view it is whites are responsible for what happened in our history, but it's not just history. It's happening in today's time. It's not over with. You talk to a Republican, this stuff is hundreds of years ago. Let it go, move on. You talk to a liberal, systemic racism is still alive and well. And you're not going to get the two sides to come to terms on that. I usually debate mostly with right wingers and Republicans, and yeah, it's almost every time you hear race brought up, it's you guys need to get over that stuff. That stuff happened hundreds of years ago. You're not going to really convince them that anything, that much at least. You're not going to convince them that there is much happening in today's world that is racist in the United States, with the exception of black people are being racist to them. You hear that more. So what they call what is it, white guilt or white resentment or something like that. There's a term for it I cannot think of. But yeah, I've talked to several white people who think that it's almost a crime to be white and white people are being discriminated against, et cetera, et cetera. And in my humble opinion, there are some double standards that exist that are anti-white. For instance, you can say white men can't dance, or white men can't jump, or white guy this, white. You get on TV and say that about a black person or minority, and you're going to be branded as a racist, and your career could be in jeopardy. So I do admit that there are some double standards. However, when we're talking about what happened at Coca Cola, is that necessary? I'm not a fan of it. But at the same time, I understand the avenue that they were trying to go down. In my opinion, if you got to tell somebody something like that, they shouldn't even be they shouldn't be an employee at your company. You shouldn't have to tell somebody, don't be an asshole. But then again, we just had an election, so we know what can happen. And we'll leave it at that. But you shouldn't have to tell somebody that. And I can understand why somebody would get angry about that. But the whole conversation really kind of leads into white privilege, and is there a rise in white supremacy? We can argue all of that. We can argue if there's privilege. I tend to lean left, so I'm gonna certainly say that I believe that there is white privilege, and I believe it's current of 2021, not 1921 or 1821, which is what you normally would hear. But I think the biggest problem is there is a significant amount of people in this country who only can see this stuff when it's in the past. And what I mean by that is if you go and ask anybody of today's caliber, even the ones who completely flat out deny racism existed in 2021. If you ask them, did racism exist in 1951? Virtually all of them will say, yeah. This is at some part. This is at the beginning of Martin Luther King coming up, and doing everything he needed to do to get things a little more fair. And they'll all admit it, that there was racism in 1951. But if you go back to 1951 and ask those people then, they said it wasn't existing. They could see it in 1921 or from the time of slavery, during the Martin Luther King days, they could clearly see that slavery was racist, but in their time, they didn't see any issue with it. And even back during slavery, you were getting free housing, free food. It's better than Africa. The people during that time didn't see it either. And it's the same way now in 2021. There's a significant group of people that do not see it. But my guess is their children in 2041, 2051 will look back, see Karens calling the police on people, see George Floyd on the ground and knee, and they'll be like, it was racist as hell back in 2021. But it's not racist in 2041. It'll be just like that. And it's always been like that. There's, because for you to admit current racism, it means examining the country you currently live in. And there's a lot of people who believe this is the most free, fair, and best country on earth. And you can't claim that when you have to admit where there's systemic racism and whole groups of people are being prevented from doing this or doing that, and there's certain people being unfairly locked up or prosecuted and, and beaten by. You can't admit all of that and then claim you live in the best country on earth. So you're just never going to get that. It'll always be an admission of something that happened in the past. Obviously, you can't admit racism happened in the 1960s during the Martin Luther King era, but then say it happened hundreds of years ago. Clearly, those two things kind of contradict each other. But that's the type of things that will lead to somewhere like Coca Cola, which is a very, very diverse company, by the way, writing statements like that. My guess is they probably wanted to keep that hidden. He certainly didn't want that to get out. But I will say kudos to them, even if they're not doing it the right way. They did make an attempt at it. They are making an attempt at having an inclusive workplace. They're not sweeping things under the rug, pretending like stuff isn't happening, and all of that. Like, for instance, in reading what they said, be less ignorant. To me, that's one of the biggest problems. When I mean by ignorant is just deliberately pretending like you don't know what people went through. George Floyd died of fentanyl abuse. When you see the guy on his neck for 8 minutes, that's being ignorant. That stuff like that is what leads to the denial of racism, where you can deny it and have it happening at the same time. Or I had a guy tell me in a debate earlier that supremacy, or better yet, racism is about hate. Supremacy is not. And I'm thinking like, well, I think I'm supreme over the typical house pet. I wouldn't let my dog drive. I wouldn't let my dog, do a lot of things that I do because I think I'm a supreme being compared to the dog. But at the same time, I don't hate dogs. So here I am being a supremacist over the animal, but then again saying I don't hate the animal. And that's exactly what used to happen. I don't think my daughter should be able to marry a black man, or I don't think I should have to live next to a black person. But I don't hate them, I don't think a black guy should be able to fly an aircraft or serve on the front lines of combat, but I don't hate them. And people actually believe that, which is why it's very difficult to get anyone to actually confess that they are a racist. It's just, I have this view or that view or that view, but I don't hate certain people. I don't hate them. And that's not just coming from, a Caucasian person. This can come from a black person or Hispanic. I mean, there are a lot of people who are bigoted or outright racist, and even in their own mind, they don't think that. They just think that their view is because of something else, when it really is just solely based on skin color. It has nothing else to do with it. You just don't like this because of the color of the person's skin. And it's until you can get out of that mindset, you're going to have a lot of people that are actually racist posing as something else. I mean, I've had a lot of people say that there's nothing wrong with, I just want to protect my bloodline. I don't believe in race mixing, or I just want to make sure I live near my own kind. I don't think we need to live in the same neighborhoods with each other and all that. And that stuff is racist as hell because It's going to lead those in power to do things that benefit their own race. I mean, if you are white and you move into, or you want to move into a black area where all of the politicians are black and they don't believe that whites and blacks should live next to you, you're going to get the shitty part of town. You're not going to get a Lakeview apartment, or, I mean, you're going to get the shitty part. And that's what's been happening throughout history. So that's why they ruled separate but equal was not equal. So if you have that type of mindset and you think you are not racist, you need to stand in the mirror and have a long look at yourself. I'm going to end this, but I will just say, enjoy Coca Cola. The cancel culture is already out. They're talking about boycotting Coke for that diversity training thing or whatever they're doing, whatever they're calling it. But I like Coke. And I like the idea that they were trying, even if they didn't do it the right way. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. I'll cut it right here.